Good afternoon. My name is Janice. I am the co-founder and executive director of Morgan's Caring Connection. And today in this virtual session, we are working with Katie Myers, insurance agency owner, and we will explore what options there are if you find out you or your special needs dependent isn't insurable. Insurance rates are too high based on physical or mental health, and making sure you have a special needs trust if you expect to leave an inheritance behind to someone with special needs. So I guess we'll get started kind of with the whole idea of when people say, hey, I have life insurance through my job or through my employer, and kind of the misconceptions around that. So maybe you could elaborate what the difference is and why they might want to consider a permanent policy.
So work life insurance is great. If your employer offers that, go ahead and take out as much as you can. It's usually low cost or no cost to the employee. But the problem with work life insurance is you do not own it. Your employer owns it. And if you leave the job, lose the job, become disabled, they change their benefit programs, you retire, those benefits are going to be gone. And if you become disabled or something like that, you might not be eligible for life insurance elsewhere. So it's a really good idea to have life insurance that you own, that you are in control of, that you know what it'll do for your family. So you're not at the mercy of whatever job you have when your time comes.
Absolutely. So just a little bit of background for us. I was talking with a bunch of individuals last night about life insurance and our situation. So Morgan was uninsurable at birth, and they knew that when my wife was 5 months pregnant. And because they basically were painting her out to be in a vegetative state for her entire life. Nonetheless, she still had extreme disabilities cognitively, physically, that she was uninsurable for life insurance. However, she did pick it up through her employer, which is UW. And the great thing is that she just clicked the box for dependents. Now, the thing that a lot of people don't understand is now it's great that they've extended insurance to the age of 26. But again, after 26, it's gone. So that's something that I thought that I would kind of share about that is a lot of people think, oh, we have this forever or whatever. And that's not the case. Unfortunately, she passed at 25. So we did have a little policy. So at least it was something which was better than nothing. But I think a lot of people don't understand that, or a child rider when you pick up a life insurance policy on yourself. So maybe you could explain a little bit more about that and when you can get a child rider on your policy and why you may want to do that.
Yeah, it's a really good thing to bring up, Janice. A children's term rider is we can write it on most policies in the industry. I work for one company, but there are many companies that offer life insurance, and most do offer a children's term rider. You do have to put it into effect before the child is born. In the case that you have a child like you did, Morgan, being born with a disability that you knew that wasn't going to be insurable. The way that the children's term rider works with the company that I work with is that we can add it to healthy children who are already here, and any children that come later will automatically be covered, and they're able to keep that coverage as adults after they're 18 years old if you choose to do so. So that is a really good option. Most insurance companies, to add the children's term rider to already living children, they may do some underwriting, thus making it difficult if you have a child who's already here with a disability.
Absolutely. And another thing that I've been talking to families about too is we often think of disability as a physical thing. There's also the mental side, the cognitive side. And I think we can all agree that mental illness is at an all-time high when it comes to depression, suicide, things of that nature. And so I think that this is another thing to impress upon people is a lot of people say, okay, well, if I don't do it when they're, like on my life insurance policy, when is the best time to get my children life insurance? And because it's based on risk, I'll let you talk a little bit more about
Yeah.
why it's so important to do it right away.
Well, do it at 14 days old legally. child has to be 14 days old in the state of Wisconsin. Every state is a little different, but 14 days old in order to put life insurance on them. And even if your child has been declined for life insurance because of their cognitive or physical disability, doesn't mean that they will be denied at every company, and also doesn't mean they will be denied in the future. We actually wrote a life insurance policy on a customer of ours who had an autism diagnosis. His parents had applied for coverage when he was younger, maybe 7 or 8 years old. He's now an adult, a young adult in his early 20s, and we were able to get him coverage. He's paying a little bit more for his coverage than the average, person of his age because of his disability. But a no right now is not a no forever. So if you have gotten that decline, look and do your research. There's other companies. If my company can't cover you, I help you find a company that can, if it's really critical, and we think that there's a company out there that can cover someone. There's also different policies. I know a lot of people that are involved in your organization have dependent children, but we've also written quite a bit of policies for dependent adults who have a disability. We actually offer a guaranteed issue policy, meaning they do not ask any health questions for people ages 45 to 80. And so we have a few customers who have, family members that they care for who are in that age range, who we've been able to get them life insurance. And there is hundreds, if not thousands, of life insurance companies out there. There may be some guaranteed issue ones for children too. I haven't done a lot of research on that, but there are options.
Okay, no, that's a good point. And that leads me to my next question, and that is, why is life insurance for special needs parents or guardians important?
It is very important. And the first thing that's important, it's important for all parents. So whether you have a neurotypical child or a neurodivergent child, you have a dependent who is depending on you, your income, your care to get into adulthood. That's important for any parent to have life insurance. But if you have a child with a disability, now is a whole nother level of importance, because that child is going to be, most of our children grow up and can care for themselves after the age of 18 or 20. If you have a child with a severe disability, they may be counting on you for the rest of their lives. So you want to make sure that you have life insurance set up that is enough to take care of their needs. And we all know that the needs of disabled children can be a lot more than a typical child. They can be a little more. It varies from case to case, and it can change over the years. So you should be revisiting your life insurance plan every few years to make sure it's keeping up with the needs, but also just to make sure that child's cared for. One of the biggest things, and I know that you'll be doing a session with some estate planning attorneys as well, but making sure that your beneficiary for your life insurance, it goes into a special needs trust, because I have seen it happen with customers. I actually saw it happen with a family member too, where money was left to a person that is on disability. They don't get that money. That money is going to go to the state. And for a child or a dependent adult who has disabilities, if that money goes to the state, they have no other options once their parents are gone. So it's really important to make sure you not only have the life insurance part figured out with the funding, but that your beneficiary part is figured out with an attorney, so that your child can actually access this money and that it doesn't go to the state.
So here's the thing, and that is a wonderful point, because yes, we had our trusts, we had a special needs trust, we had guardianship. It's very important. And like you said, another thing can happen is they could lose their benefits. They may get the money awarded to them and then they lose their benefits. And so a lot of people think that they're doing, like grandparents and stuff, they think they're leaving a legacy and they're doing them a favor, and doing something that's out of love and care, but then it ends up potentially devastating them or the family because of that. So I 100% agree with you. And when you are interviewing families, what kinds of questions might you ask them to make sure that that they either are or aren't in a position where they may need to look into getting a special needs trust?
So usually if I have a customer who I know does have a special needs child, I always recommend you need to go see an attorney and you need to check into this and see if this is right for you. I think that anyone with any kind of child that's going to need some care should be getting a trust. And like beyond that, even us with typically developing children, you need a trust as well. So I think it's something that every family should look into, but it's just so much more critical for special needs families. My light went out.
I know, where'd you go?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And I know from being in the insurance business for a while and having my license that a lot of agents will ask like, oh, what's their name? What's their age? What's their birth date? But never take it a step further, because one thing I think it's important for people to understand is we don't always know as parents to volunteer that information, that we have somebody that we have guardianship of, because we don't necessarily know that we should
Mhm.
divulge that information. And quite honestly, not everybody wants to divulge that information. They want to keep it private. So I found that, asking more questions, digging deeper, because again, you may get referred somebody that you don't know. And so that's just something that I think is super important for parents to know, is that maybe divulge that information, that it's private, but it's important for us to know, or for you to know, I should say, in
Yeah.
order to properly guide them and make sure that they're getting what they need, or referring them to somebody who can provide that. Um,
Yeah.
I think something that's super important that people may not know or understand is, let's talk a little bit about insurable interest. So, for example, we have taken out policies on our grandchildren. Do you have to be a parent or a grandparent, or a family member even, to take a life insurance policy out on somebody else?
Well, if the somebody you're taking a life insurance policy out on has a parent or guardian who is not you, they also need to sign for the policy. If I could take a life insurance policy out on you, Janice, and be the owner if we both agreed to it. So anyone can do that, but they just have to have the approval and signature of the parent or guardian.
I think that's important for people to know, because again, we might have children, grandchildren, whatever, and they're like, well, but I can't afford it. So to be able to know that you in fact can take a policy out on somebody, whether they're family or not, I think is super important. Because one of the things too that I'm finding is, at my age range, we're becoming guardians of brothers and sisters, aunts and uncles. So it's not always about our children. And I think it's an important focus, but at the same token, we need to make sure that we understand that and are having conversations with our parents
Yes.
and other family members, because I think you'll agree with me that nobody wants to talk about life insurance. Why would
I
we?
do, nobody else.
Well, I do too, because it is so important and it can change people's lives. It really can make a
Mhm.
difference in knowing. So for us, again, with Morgan only having a small policy through my wife's employer, our funeral costs were $25,000, and that was modest. And we had to each take off 30 days from work. Again, 3 days bereavement, no offense, is an insult. But it's also not possible, especially when you lose a child. It's just not possible. So what can you do, and what is life insurance? And maybe that's something we could talk about just briefly, is what can life insurance be used for?
So it can be used for anything. And whether you work with me or another reputable life insurance agent, they should walk you through a process to figure out what your life insurance need is. We can talk in a moment about the different types of life insurance, but the most important thing is the amount of life insurance that you need. And a good insurance agent should do this with anybody. So when I go through my process, I ask about things about, what debt do you have? Do you still have a mortgage? How many kids are still at home? What needs to be taken care of in terms of final expenses? All of the other things that need to be taken care of after you're gone. Do we need to replace your income so your spouse can remain in the house in the same lifestyle? So we ask all those questions, but we go deeper when it's a family with a dependent child or a dependent adult because of a disability. Like, what is required for their care? What's going to happen when you're no longer here? Especially, like you brought up, that there's a lot of people in your age range who are now caring for siblings because the parents have passed on. And we're seeing that a lot in our office too. I have a lot of baby boomers who are now caring for the siblings because their parents are gone. And it's an important thing to understand what that person needs. And if we need to factor that into the life insurance amount, that that if this is the person who needs a wheelchair and that's something that has to be purchased out of pocket, like we need to plan for that. If this person's going to need 3 more wheelchairs after you're gone, or something like that. So just make sure you're working with somebody who really drills down and talks to you about all of the different things to be aware of.
No, that's super important. Thank you. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about the different kinds of life insurance. So why don't you go ahead and tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So there are three major types of life insurance that I work with, and those are a term life insurance policy. Term is like renting your insurance. So just like you rent an apartment, right? You sign your lease. It's a very inexpensive way to get housing. You pay your rent every month. You have somewhere to live, but when your lease is up, you got nowhere to live. That's how term policy works. They generally come in 10, 20, or 30 years. It is the most cost-effective, low-cost way to get life insurance. Term life insurance is usually very, very good for people who have a very big life insurance need for a short period of time. And I tell people often personally, right now, my husband and I have large term policies. We have a mortgage, we have debt, we have kids that need to be raised, two income households. So we need that right now. But that's going to be different when we're 60 and the kids are grown and the house is paid off. We're just going to need to take care of final expenses. So we don't need as much. So that's how term life insurance works. The next type we work with is called refundable life insurance, also called a return on premium term life insurance policy. So these policies typically last 20 or 30 years. It works just like a term. You pay your money every month or every year, you got coverage, you pass away during the policy term, we will pay the death benefit to your family. But if you're alive at the end of that, you don't have coverage. But with the refundable policy, we give you back every single penny you put into that policy. You're going to pay more for that option, but all that money comes back to you at the end of the term and you are all good to go. And the dirty secret that most people will not tell you that work in the insurance industry is that as an industry, we pay out less than 2% of term policies, meaning you're probably not going to die in the next 10, 20, or 30 years that they offer you a term for. But it's just like your seatbelt, right? You put on your seatbelt not because you plan to get into an accident, it's the consequences of if you do. Same thing with life insurance. So my customers that really like the refundable term, they like the affordability and the way that term works, but they know that there's a 98% chance they're going to get their money back. So it's a great option.
Like
And then the
it's like
third,
a forced savings account, so to speak.
yes, it
Yep.
is.
And
Yes.
I actually did it when I was younger, when I bought my first house, with the intention that that would cover the mortgage in the event something happened to me. Nothing else, just the mortgage. I ended up not needing it for that and got my money back. So it was like
Yeah.
I think I got like $12,000 back. It was a nice,
And there's no taxes. It's your money.
yep. So I think
So
it's important for people to know that that's an option.
it's a great option. And then the last type of life insurance is permanent life insurance, also called whole life insurance. So whole life insurance is more like buying a house, right? So when you buy a house, the value of the house goes up over time and you gain equity in that house. And that's similar to how a whole life insurance policy works. As long as you pay for it, it will be enforced for the rest of your life, whether you die sooner or later. You can build a cash value inside the policy. There's some people who use that as a tax advantage way to save for the future. They use it as a, as their own bank. There's all different fancy things you can do with permanent life insurance. But for most people, permanent life insurance is just life insurance. And it's a great option if you do not have a huge life insurance need, because if you needed $1 or $2 million in life insurance, it's very, very expensive to get it through whole life. But if you have someone like a disabled dependent child or adult, a whole life insurance policy is a really good option because that policy will be enforced forever. And most term life insurance policies do have options to convert them into a permanent life insurance policy without getting too much in the weeds. Here's the thing. Talk to an insurance agent, talk about your situation, your budget, what your family needs, and they can help you find the policy that fits your needs best.
That makes sense. Absolutely. Thank you. I think for now, I think we pretty much give people enough information to move forward.
I got one more thing I want to share real quick.
Please do.
Okay, so I have this in my office and I show it to everyone I talk to life insurance about. It's a book and it's called I'm Dead, Now What? I bought this for $15 on Amazon. It is so all the people you're talking to, they're going to do everything right. They're going to go and get their special needs trust set up. They're going to get life insurance set up. There's all these things, but you unfortunately know better than anybody all of the things you go through when you lose someone. I remember you telling me that you couldn't find Morgan's Apple password and all these things. What this book is it has all of that. passwords, logins, books. You know, like all the things that people need to know. Where are my bills being paid? All of that. I recommend also doing something like this. So just those nuts and bolts things, you take care of the big things. That's awesome. But you also got to take care of those little things so your family knows, you know, where to close your bank account and stuff like that.
Oh, that's a great idea. Thank you for sharing that. I think I will get on Amazon and order that right away. Because
Order one for everyone.
absolutely. And the thing is, you can do some of that within your trust, but if they can't find it, that's a problem. So
Yeah.
you got, but half the battle is knowing where to find things. And it was a common
Yes.
conversation with my mom before she moved in with us, like, where do we find your stuff even? Because people have safe deposit box at the bank, or they have something locked in their closet, or who knows what.
Or you
Depending,
forget, like, I mean, I have 6 credit cards. Like, I
right.
can't even remember the logins. Why would my family know after I'm gone? You
Right,
know?
exactly, exactly. And nobody wants to deal with that. Trust me, I understand.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you think would be important to share with people that might view this video?
I would just say speak to a person that you're speaking to that's local, whether it's me or somebody else. Just make sure you trust the person you're working with, that it's not a fly-by-night company. We see that a lot too. People will buy a policy and then it's from a small company that's bought and sold 100 different times. And it's a nightmare when it comes time for a claim. So make sure you're working with a reputable agent, a reputable company that you know is going to be there, and that you also are working with an agent that believes that life insurance is a living, breathing thing. This is not a set it and forget it, you're done forever. It's something you need to revisit every few years and make sure it's still in line with what your family needs.
Absolutely. So when your insurance agent or their office calls and says it's time to review your policies, don't blow it off.
Yes,
They're
do
doing
not
you
blow
a
it off.
service.
Yes.
All right, wonderful. Well, thank you very much for your time, Katie. We look forward to our next session with you, that we're going to discuss other ways that property can be insured, durable medical equipment and things of that nature. So I look forward to that, and we'll talk to you again soon.